As much information as we can possibly give you on what is happening to your A27. And I say that because the A27 involves everybody who lives in Worthing and Ada, whether you've got a car or not. Your stuff is delivered there, your friends visit you, and they all use the A27. So we all realise what a vital road it is. I'd like to say a few thanks. The stewards who are here tonight. Without stewards, we could not have this hall. We have to supply stewards, and I'm very grateful to the task force who have filled the role admirably, and we've met all our needs for it. I would also like to thank the Worthing Borough Council Theatre staff who have bent over backwards to cater for my short memory, loss of memory, and all the normal mistakes I make. I should say actually I took this job on very reluctantly about 2 years ago, and my wife has just started talking to me again now, believe you me. She refers to me as Worthing's last boring old fool, and I think she's probably right. I do hope we do. I would ask you, ladies and gentlemen, I know how emotive this subject is. It's just about 10 years to the day when we had our first squash meeting in this pavilion, and I'm sure some of you who are here now were at that. That was a very successful campaign run between Worthing and Ada, and I hope this one is going to be just as successful with a successful outcome. And we've done that because when we had our meetings, we listened as well as spoke. And I would ask everybody tonight, please wait until the presentation is over for your questions. One speaker at a time, so that then everybody can hear what is going on. I would ask you to bear that in mind, please. There are question sheets in the front because I'm sure we've got not far short of 800 people in here tonight. Some of you will leave not being able to ask your question. In the box in front of me there are question sheets which you can write your question on, leave them in the box, and I will personally make sure that they are delivered to the people you want them delivered to. Because on the sheet it has a question for, put whoever you want to answer it, and I will make sure it's delivered to them. If we run out of sheets, please just put it on a scrap of paper, put my name on it, deliver it to the town hall, and I assure you it will get to me somewhere. So that because of the time limit, we are going to finish at 9 o'clock. I'm absolutely certain, because that's when we've got the hall hired for. But if you haven't had your question, please don't leave disgruntled. You've still got plenty of opportunities to answer it. The timetable is from tonight. You'll be very pleased to know I'm going to sit down and shut up in a minute. Then we'll have Tim Loughton, Member of Parliament for East Worthing and Shoreham, followed by Sir Peter Bottomley, MP for Worthing West. And then we've got a presentation by Highways England. And they are going to try to tell you where we are at the moment with the planning for the A27. I can tell you now that they are not going to be able to answer any technical questions on the actual pinch points, the bits they are trying to eradicate, because that is work in progress. The consultants dealing with that are still working that through. Believe you me, I am as impatient as every one of you in this room to know what options they're going to be giving us on them pinch points. We've then got Stephen here, I'm sorry Stephen, I've forgotten your surname, who's going to give us a very interesting presentation. I'll say interesting because I've seen it before, on the value of eradicating pinch points. It's a sort of a hobby horse of Stephen's, and I'm sure you're going to find that very, very interesting. We then have a presentation by the business people of Worthing and Ada, who put their case of why we need to improve the A27. And from then on, it is public questions. We'll take your questions as you come up. There are 2 roving mics in the hall. Please be patient. There is no way we're going to get through 800 questions, and I suspect many of you have 2 or 3 questions. When you do come to ask a question, please no statements, because if somebody takes 5 minutes making a statement, that's 10 people don't get a question in. So please, I'll be quite brutal on it. questions only, not statements. And then Andrew is my co-chair. We'll roll up the meeting at 5 to 9. I should certainly be here for 20 minutes afterwards, anybody wants to see me, and we will close at 9 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for coming out. I think we should thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, good evening everybody. I just want to put a few things in context and give a little bit of background. And Tom is right, I think this is the biggest meeting we've been to back in the pavilion since the Quash campaign. Again, Tom chaired that meeting very well back in 2007, I think it was. This is the biggest issue that's been facing Worthing, certainly all the time that Peter and I represented the town, which is now almost 20 years, and many of you here will know it was a big issue for longer than that before we became the town's MPs. I've been going through my files on the A27 today. I found old press releases and papers from Terence Higgins when he was involved with it as the MP for Worthing before 1997. So this is a big and long-standing issue. And we have been through a series of public meetings, of ministers' meetings, and surveys and consultations, and lots of false starts over the last 20 years. But what happened in December 2014, when at long last the government put it in their road strategy, is the government recognised that we have got to do something about the A27, and they earmarked some money to do it. Since when, the consultants worked with Highways England have been putting together all sorts of modelling, and that modelling hasn't yet finished. So the reason, as Tom said, for holding this meeting is it's slightly premature, because next year, when they produce their various options, which has to trigger a whole load of public consultation, there will be many more meetings, exhibitions and surveys to make sure we try and get the best possible solution for some of the problems on the A27. However, all sorts of rumours and information and misinformation has been going around. Apparently 300 houses are going to be demolished. We're going to have a 6-lane, 70-mile-per-hour superhighway going through Worthing. As you will hear later this evening, nothing could be further from the truth, and it's really not helpful to have that sort of information going around. So it's really important that we did a meeting now to try and allay some of those fears, and for Highways England to say exactly where they are with the work they're doing, and when exactly we will hear in the new year about the actual proposals that they're going to come forward with. Now, one thing we did do was to form this A27 working group, which had its first meeting in July of 2015 at the Town Hall. We've met probably about half a dozen times since, with Tom as the chair. And we did that because it was really important for two things. First, to try and make sure that we could get as much information out as possible to the wider community in Worthing, and particularly when the proposals become live proposals, to facilitate meetings and to get that information out. And so that working group, which has become quite big, consists of politicians from all the political parties to try and make this not a party matter. So we've got councillors, representatives, the MPs from all the political parties on it. We've got the Chamber of Commerce and some local businesses who have an interest, obviously, in the A27. And then we've got a whole range of residents groups. And I think we've got just about every resident group and parish council along the line of the A27 between Shoreham and South, which is represented. So all the people around that table know as much as I do about this, and the job was to disseminate that information out to all your resident groups as well. That group will really come into its own when we have some firm information to go on. Now, the other reason for doing that was to try and coalesce around a solution which most of us could agree on. We are never going to please everybody all of the time. But the lesson from the 1990s, and I remember there were 15,000 people signed a petition against one route, 12,000 people signed a petition against another route, one council was in favour of one route, one MP was against another. And at the end of the day, and it's more complicated than that, I know, basically the Department of Transport said, well, if you can't agree amongst yourselves, we're not going to spend X million quid on a new road, and the whole lot was dropped. So what we need to do this time is to come up with a solution around which most of us can actually agree to go back to government, and it has to be signed off by government before they release the funds and approve the work, to say that actually is the thing that most people can go along with. Now that's going to be a tough call, but that's why we've got to have maximum consultation and transparency around this, which is what I'm really keen that we do. If we don't achieve that, the whole lot could be dropped again, and we go back to having no solution. And whether we like it or not, the traffic on the A27 is not going to get any better over the next few years. If various housing developments go ahead, particularly over the Lancing-Salting side, it's going to add to that. We've got to have something done on the A27. So the final point, and particularly I think it's important to hear from Highways England, as to why a full-blown bypass, which all of us would have liked, and the time to do that was back in the 1990s, is not an option now, but the options that are being worked up are online options. Now, we need to know, and you need to know, exactly why a full-blown bypass has been ruled out, and actually was, right at the beginning of this process. That probably was not communicated as well as it should have been, but that's why Highways England are here to talk us through that process, and those things that aren't actually being considered. So I just wanted to put that to context. We'll answer questions. We will do whatever meetings it takes over the next months and a couple of years or so as this process goes on. Because, as I say, at the end of the day, we have got to do something. Doing nothing is not an option. And we need to make sure that as many people as possible go along with whatever that option we come up with. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Peter just to give a bit more context about the original plans back in the 1990s.
Thanks, Tim, and thanks, Tom, and thank you, everybody who's come, and those who helped organise this. Like I said at the beginning, that if the High Sarlington residents, or the residents in my constituency along the A27 would like me to come to a special meeting, I'm very happy to do that. Like Tom, and like Tim, were it possible to have a road which took all the traffic away, put it through High Sarlington, or put it through the Downs, no one would object if it were environmentally acceptable, work in traffic terms, be cost-effective, and actually make the rest of life in the populated areas of Worthing district better, they'd be fine. But the inspector in the 1990s ruled out both of those options. The Worthing Council then proposed the road through Sarlington, ruled out. The South Downs route ruled out, and the reasons for ruling them out are even more valid now than they were then. And Tim has rightly said that the Department of Transport in 1996 said, because there isn't a consensus on what should happen, nothing's going to happen. And I won't take you through the history of John Prescott coming here and suggesting we all go by bus and all the rest of that. It'd be great. I also remember Peter Gamble, who some of you may remember, one of the businessmen in town, saying he didn't let his trucks go out on the roads after 3:30 in the afternoon because they just sit in a traffic jam. And traffic jams are one of the two risks that we face. One is the air pollution of traffic going in jams, or not going, and the second are the risks of people on the roads. And one of the things I feel guilty about is in my early years as an MP, I campaigned hard to get a particular crossing made safer on the A259 near Hankton Lane. It happened after 2 elderly pensioners had been run down and killed. And I think that the risks on the present A27 are enough to justify a road by itself. The business case for it will hear from the business people. In the past, I've been roads minister. I got the cross-bush improvement put in even before the Arundel bypass, which ought to have happened many decades ago. I've tried to make sure that the Brighton bypass went through the hill rather than going cutting through it at Southwick. I know more about roads from 20 or 30 years ago than most people. I don't claim to be the expert, modern expert, but I can tell you that no national road now will be built unless there are general benefits for the local population. We're not doing it for those who want to go from one side of Worthing to the other alone. They've got some interest, that's why it's a national road. But most of it is for the district in and around this town. I hope that by having discussions, we can actually clear away some of the misconceptions, bring out into the open the differences of view and some of the differences of interest. But I'll tell you this, if my children and grandchildren actually lived in a house where they had to go on and off the A27 into their own drive 3 or 4 times a day, I'd be campaigning for an improved A27 that is safer and better and less pollution for those who live along it. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abia Luande, and I'm here with my colleague, Madam Ryan from England. We're here to talk you through where we're at with the A27 Water and Lansing scheme today. Content of this presentation, I'm starting with the feasibility study, and that fed into the road investment strategy. And I'll talk about the current work that we're doing today with our consultants. I've brought up, I know there's been a suggestion from others about possible routes, possible relief routes, so we'll talk about that. And then I'll describe the timescale that we have for developing the scheme going forward to construction. The A27 feasibility corridor study was carried out in 2014-2015 by our consultants, and we have a pilot in.
Could you speak up, please?
Is that better? Yes. Okay. I'll try and move closer then. The A27. The A27 feasibility corridor study was carried out in 2014-2015. And that study fed into the road investment strategy document. The study considered a number of options. It looked at tunnels, a combination of tunnels and bypasses, dualling, online dualling throughout, online junction improvements, and by online I mean the existing A27, and it also looked at public transport. Some options were discounted at the very first stage of the feasibility study. Those options consisted of about £1.2 billion, and a bypass option, which was immediately to the north of Worthing and Lansing, costed to around £950 million. Moving forward from the next stage of the feasibility study, it then looked at various options of maximising tunnelling and a combination of online dualling and localised improvements to the junctions. Option A, which was the maximised tunnelling, was costed to around £1.2 billion to £1.4 billion. Option F, which was an online dualling option, was costed to around £90 to £100 million. Option G, which consists of localised widening around the junctions, was costed to around £50 million. Moving forward within the feasibility study, we looked at benefits for the costs that was allocated to each option. As you can see on the screen, we carried out some cost-benefit ratios, that's basically looking at the benefits to the cost of the project. Option A, which is a tunnelling option, of around £1.2 billion, came out to 0.9, which was a low PCR. Option F, an online dualling option, came out to 6.5 as a cost-benefit ratio. And option G, as a £50 million, which is a low-cost option, came to 6.0 on the BCR scale. Taking forward in this feasibility study was the option F and option G combined, based on the BCRs used. So going forward, the options that we were tasked to look at were online dualling and improvements to the junctions. Outcomes from the feasibility study fed into the road investment strategy document produced in 2014. And that's a document that we as Highways England worked to, that was given to us by the government. That document clearly states that A27 was an enhancement improvement to the capacity of the road and junctions along the stretch of the single carriageway, and Worthing and narrow lane dual carriageway in Lansing. The extent of improvements included the option of through dualling and to be agreed in consultation with stakeholders, such as West Sussex County Council and the public themselves. So just to reiterate, this is a document that Highways England worked to, and it's mandate from the government. At the moment, we are carrying out technical work, so we haven't really got any options to share, unfortunately, at this moment, and that's because we're carrying out various works such as traffic surveys, which is a traffic count of existing traffic, junction modelling, and that includes future traffic forecasting and so on and so forth. Environmental study, route assessment, so we're looking at various routes and assessing them against the environment and junction modelling. Cost-benefit analysis, which basically looks at various number of options, and then we put a cost against each one and find out what the cost-benefit ratio is for each of those options. And last but not least, we are in consultation with stakeholders, so we have various meetings with stakeholders who feed us with local technical knowledge of the area. So all this work is currently going on. That's the reason why we don't have any options at the moment, unfortunately, to share with you. I know that's one of the main concerns of people, but we will be having that shortly towards the end of this year. There's been a suggestion by various groups that we picked up along the way that another relief road would be one of the options that we should be looking at. And this is one of the options that we picked up. Just to touch on that very briefly, the reasons why this would be a viable option for us to assess. The route, as you can see, was quite long, so it takes a longer route and it's going to be quite more expensive. The alignment itself is quite, I want to look at the word, windy, to take the traffic that will come through the A27, with sharp angles. The current priorities at the junctions will need to be revisited to cope with the traffic flow. The road is currently a local authority road, and that will have to be changed onto a strategic network route, which is Highways England. And last but not least, it goes to the National Park. So all of those combined just makes the relief road that's been proposed by others slightly impossible to do. To talk about the timescale that we're looking at to when we'll have construction in sight. So the feasibility itself was carried out last year, 2014, 2015. We started talks with stakeholders last year as well, and that's an ongoing process. So we're still talking to various organisations such as the local authorities, environment agency, every organisation that can give us some technical input, basically. The development of the options is being carried out now by our consultants, and as I've said before, that's the reason why we don't have the options to share with you, because we're still working through all that, all the technical side of things. We're working towards public consultation on the various options that we prepare next year. So, around about summer next year, we hope to be able to share the options that we've developed with the public. Following that process, the preferred route would be announced shortly afterwards. Again, that's in 2017, next year. And then the next few stages, that takes us right to the end of the process itself, which is start of works and open to traffic. So you've got the DCO process, and that's a statutory process that we need to go through. And then the start of works is 2021, and hopefully with a 2-year contract period open to traffic in 2023. We've got on the scheme itself, because I know you're going to have lots of questions, and I hope to answer most of them. But if there's anything that occurs, we've got some contact details and a website that actually has all the information on the scheme. We try to update the scheme website each time there's new information, so please, I would encourage everyone to visit the website or sign up for alerts as soon as they come through. I think we're taking questions at the end, or we're doing questions now?
Ladies and gentlemen, especially to the members of the working group, this presentation will be sent to me on Monday morning. I will then send it out to all members of the working group who can then disseminate it through their various channels. Every presentation we're doing tonight will be available to the working group, and they can disseminate it however you want to use it. I think it'd be a good idea to have a few questions now for Highways England. There's a gentleman at the back there. Have we got the roving mics ready? Yes, sir.
It's not a sir, it's a lady. And I just want to ask, it's all very well talking about this, it's going to be another 5 years, the very earliest, before it's even started, but what are you going to do about Arundel? Because we still have that big lump there, and that's not going to solve the problem of the traffic getting flowingly along the A27.
Good question. Arundel is also one of the areas that we're looking at, so it's a scheme that's been running concurrently with the Weather and Lancing scheme, so there's work being carried on that as well.
How much money is available, how many million for the Lancing and Worthing section, and what percentage of that money is being spent on the preparatory work and won't be available for the full works?
The budget we've been given by the government is between 50 million and 100 million pounds for the Weather and Lancing scheme. And that's in total of all the works. The preparatory works are a minimal amount of that 50 to 100 million pounds.
How much million will be spent on the preparatory work?
What exactly do you mean by preparatory works?
Well, all the stuff we've been talking about from 2015 to 2021.
Okay, I can hazard a guess, but I wouldn't want to. But in comparison to the £100 million, it's actually a fraction of it. Because you've got the works that the consultants are carrying out. The bulk.
What percentage? Is it 1%, 2%, or is it an X percentage? You don't know?
I don't know the percentage.
Well, could you find out, please? Thank you.
If you be quiet, I might be able to see you, please.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. I don't know if you can clarify some of the contradictions that we're hearing. Mr. Loughton says, he's gone public as saying there isn't really going to be 300 houses knocked down in a dual carriageway. Mr. Bottomley says that he's concerned about everybody having to drive in and out of their drives onto the road. Therefore, if people aren't going to drive onto the road, and you're not going to knock down 300 houses, how are those people going to get out at all? Or is there actually going to be a dual carriageway? And you've just said in your presentation that the road will be open in 2023. Well, if you're going to open a road in 2023, that suggests at some point the road's going to be closed or there is a new road. So we're getting 3 different messages from 3 different people, none of which probably deal with the problem, which is that there's just too much traffic. So is somebody, yourself or the 2 MPs, able to clarify why they are giving us such contradictory messages?
They're not incompatible. One question is how many homes would have to be demolished if there's an online improvement? Some people have said 300. Tim said that's not right. Until you have a scheme, you won't know how many rooms are demolished. Some may be more may be bought rather than demolished. It's been bought and sold and bought and sold. We all do that. I've said there's a question of how you get onto the road. One of the things that designers have to do in working on a proposal is actually how to solve that problem. What are the safe ways in which people will have access to the road? On the question of how much gets spent on preparatory design, that depends how long that takes and how much is involved. But as we were told by Abby, it will be a relatively small proportion of the total cost. Most of the cost of a road will be environmental protection and mitigation. Actually building the road or structures is significant, but most of it goes on mitigating the effect on local people. So I think that all these things are compatible, and if everyone goes exploring every question, we aren't actually going to get as many answers as we ought to have.
Let me just add to that. On the options that you've seen, struck a whole range. So you had the most expensive option of could we have a huge tunnel through the whole lot, and that comes out at 1.2 billion, and that's just for starters by the time you've finished it, whether or not it's feasible. Right the way through to doing a little bit of tinkering on the junctions. Now, which may or may not have any tangible effect. What we need to get out of this is something that's actually going to have a tangible effect. So one thing that we were keen that they should look at is what would the impact of dualling be if dualling was seen as a solution. It has become very clear that to have a full dual carriageway on the A27, through that wording to link up the bits that haven't, is absolutely not feasible. The Highways of England cannot say that yet until they produce their full options next year. I have no doubt that when those options come out, it will not involve any extensive or any at all additional dualling of that bit of road, and the solutions will concentrate on reconfiguration of the so-called pinch points, those major junctions, and the amount of houses that may be involved in that will probably be in single figures. You only involve 300 houses if you count every single house along that stretch of the road, and then you have to demolish the whole lot. That was never an option. It could never come within the amount of money available, even if it were a desirable option, which it's not. So at the end of the day, we are going to have a solution which will concentrate on those pinch points, the full details of which we will have at some stage next year, and then we must decide whether it's meaningful enough to actually make a difference and to make sure that it does.
In your presentation, you used the word dualling. Can you please say what sort of dualling this is? Is it single carriageway or dual carriageway dualling?
It's online improvement. So the technical boring term for it is 2+2 because it's not. There is not sufficient room on the online improvement to have a full spec dual carriageway online. That just doesn't happen. So to try and get some clarity to it, it's a 2+2. But in common parlance, it's dual in the sense that you've got 2 lanes running each way. You wouldn't have a centre reservation and that kind of thing. But you know, what you're trying to draw to us is this is we're still looking at the options as to what you can do between 50 and 100 million pounds. And Okay.
Answer the question. Is it a single carriageway or a dual carriageway you're proposing?
Well, that is what I've answered. It's single, but you would have possibility in places of 2 lanes each way. But the point is that it works within the highway boundary.
If, as I understand it, the consultants are Canadian, how do they have local knowledge of this area, and why, in fact, is there not a consultant employed from the area?
Because the consultants are not Canadian, they're actually based in the UK, and they're based in Bottomley. They have the local knowledge. They carried out the feasibility study as well, and they're carrying out the current technical work for us.
Hello, Highways England say that you've got a mandate for the government. I would like to know, is the government defining the cost-benefit ratio and the cost-benefit analysis? Because I can't see the logic behind either of them. The figures you are giving were all on some cost-benefit analysis. Yeah? Is that a general term that you all use, or is there something specific to Highways England, or is it something from the government? How you define it, the logic behind it?
The cost-benefit ratio is basically the ratio of the net total of the benefits over the costs, and those benefits are modified by the government. We use government standards, so the design.
So it's a government standard.
It is a formula from the government. Yes,
It's
through the government.
So we can't change that.
No.
So each piece of this information that goes into the cost-benefit analysis is something that you work out yourselves from.
Yeah, we work it out based on formally given to us by the government. So there is a standard format, and this is used throughout the UK. That comes up with the formula that we use.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you. My question's on a similar vein. In relation to cost-benefit, is it right to say that the amount of money that this will generate for the area is 6 times the amount that will be spent? Is that what the 6 figure in the cost-benefit meant? Because I think in terms of making it feel real to local people, a point something on a spreadsheet is confusing, but how many millions and billions might be going into local businesses and local people, I think, is of more interest than a figure on a spreadsheet. If you could help me out, I'd be grateful on that.
Yeah, we're not practitioners in personally, Abby and myself, in terms of what it is. It's a formula that enables each scheme to be measured so that you can see by a unit, the same as pounds and dollars are a unit of a value. So that there's a formula, very complex formula behind that establishes so that you can do a comparison of one option against another. So that the 6 is just demonstrating that it has much greater economic benefit than the 0.9.
It worries me that the northern route was discounted all those years ago because things have changed since then. During the Shoreham tragedy last summer, that northern route was used for several weeks. The through traffic went along that northern route. There was no problem in Worthing for traffic at that time. It wasn't school holidays either, it was working time. Why can't we have another look at that route based on the data that could be obtained from the authorities that organise that diversion? It must work well apart from the ordinary pinch points at Finland and Washington. But to improve that road, and we were told it's been discounted due to cost, I'm sure that is not relevant today.
Let me just be clear. By the northern route, are you talking about the one that we put on the screen? Yeah. Okay. I don't know all the history behind that one, but as Abby tried to explain, that is long, it's got a huge amount of works to do to it to make it work. It would be very expensive, and it'd be well out the 50 to 100 million that we've been given the budget for.
Don't go that far out then.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Can we give the man a chance to answer, please?
Yeah. Well, that really is it. I appreciate that the audience disagrees with me, but the cost would be much more enormous than what we're trying to achieve.
Can I just come back to that? You hear me? That worked well with the through traffic last year for 7 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks from the shore of tragedy. It worked very well then with the pinch points we've got at Findon and Washington roundabout. You can't tell me to improve those pinch points will cost more than what you're intending to.
When you do the roadworks on the A27, where are you going to send the traffic that comes through Worthing? What route are they going to take? Are you going to be closing a road when you do these works or what? Are they going to use the northern route? More than likely.
The road will not be closed. We'll be carrying out traffic management on the route whilst the construction work is ongoing.
But the lorries will use the northern route because it'll be quicker.
May I ask my question now? It seems to me that the more we go on, we're getting more and more obfuscation. This is nonsense, you know. We are listening to this. We're all trying to understand, and we're getting figures that are really meaningless. For example, the cost-benefit analysis, we just get a figure. We don't know what went into it, we have no idea what it is at all. It's been produced as part of an argument. This is nonsense. You can't go wrong like this. Secondly, have you carried out a proper discounted cash flow analysis over the entire time in which the road is going to be feasible after it's been built? Have you?
That work is being currently carried out at the moment. All the technical work we're doing is currently being carried out at the moment.
How is it that you can do a cost-benefit analysis right at the very beginning without being able to do a DCF at the same time? It's not difficult to do, you know.
The cost-benefit analysis for the options shown in the feasibility study was done back then. We don't have that detailed information with us right now because that was done back in 2014, 2015.
I suggest you get a move on. Stop. Secondly, the tunnelling and northern route have been dismissed as being too expensive. And if you do a proper DCF, I'd be very interested to find out how close they get to the one that's been proposed. But I do not believe the flow of traffic is going to be improved in one way by this.
A few years ago, they put traffic lights at the roundabout by the Grove Lodge. The councillor who proposed this has since left the country. In August, the traffic lights were off for about a month, and the traffic flowed superbly. That was great for my wife, who went to visit a friend up in Dorking. Took her 40 minutes to come through back to Downlands Avenue, just off the A27. Bear in mind the construction industry is in a state of decline at the moment. Why can't the government provide the money, following Brexit, etc., to give us a decent, proper bypass? Earlier, talking about mandates. We don't want a mandate from the government. We want localisation. We want a mandate to you from us. let's not just widening a few little bits of road. They spent £1 million down the town, putting a few bricks in the circle. We can do better than that. Let's have a proper black pass. Let's think about the future.
I think it is just, let's be fair about it. Highways England had nothing to do with the refurbishment of Montague. That was a county council job, and I think it's very, very unfair to ask Highways England to comment on that. Let's have another question.
Can I just say, you ruled out, said about a feasibility study, you ruled out a tunnel. I just wondered, can you just answer me that, I know you probably don't know about other countries, but Switzerland can build a 20-mile tunnel for trains through solid granite, costing several hundred million francs. Okay, it's taken 20 years to do it, they've managed it, but we can't manage to save the integrity of a national park and the people of Worthing and Lancing to build a simple tunnel from chalk. Just to do that, can't we just spend a bit more money than this £100 million been banded around to build a tunnel that would save a national park from destruction and extra traffic, and also save all these people here from pollution and traffic and all the aggravation of having that? When it's chalk, you can tunnel through chalk, build a channel tunnel. If they can tunnel through granite, why can't we build a tunnel? What's the problem? It's just money. But we have to work within the constraints that we're given. Even other countries will have to do a cost-benefit analysis of whether it's a good return on the public spend of money, and that's not where we're at the moment. But for this particular scheme, our remit is a range between 50 and 100 million, and that's what we've been given by the government.
I'm going to take two more questions, and then we're going to get on with another presentation. There will be more question time at the end, I promise you. Applaud by all means, and fully accept our emotions, and now and again we're going to boo. But please keep you clapping and your booing to a minimum, so we're going to get more questions. That gentleman there.
About the northern bypass, these figures of why it should be so expensive to go around the existing northern route, where there is already a road, so we can forget all this nonsense about it's going to go through the South Downs National Park. There's already a road there. We're talking about widening the existing road via Washington, Stenning, and then we come down to the long furlong once again. Now that is downland, which is fairly easily accessible. We won't have all the social cost. I don't think we see these figures. There's nothing about the cost to the people that live in the town that are going to have to live through it, because this is going to go on for years. And Mr. Loughton very well spoke about the issue with Grove Lodge. Now, for some reason or other, the authorities didn't listen, and I wrote a local paper saying how well the traffic started to flow once the traffic lights were out of your commission. But then, regardless of general agreement by virtually everybody I spoke to, they said it's so much better. Why do we have to have the traffic lights back on? And this is another typical view of bureaucracy knows best. The people that have to use it and suffer with it every day just get ignored. And I cannot believe that trying to put dual carriageway through cutting the town in half even more so, we have the the council, that was many, many years ago, decided that we should have a retail park on the north side of the A27. So consequently, we've now got traffic lights there. Will those traffic lights ever disappear? Of course they won't. They're just going to increase the through flow by trying to make the road more attractive, and it's just going to compound the even worse state of things.
I'm just on the growth right, and I agree with everything every one of you have said about it. But there is a reverse on it. The Worthing College will say they want the lights on from the safety of their kids. I totally agree with that. I would put a video for it tomorrow if I could.
They only need a pedestrian crossing for that. They don't need the traffic.
I totally agree. I spend a lot of time on the A27, and I hate growth lights, believe me.
Yeah, let's move on from growth. We will take the question back with us. I can ask our security provider to take another look at that.
Last one there, the gentleman there.
You costed it between 50 and 100 million pounds. Yeah?
Pass the mic along, please.
If you stand up, you can see where the magnets come to.
You've costed it between 50 and 100 million pounds, yeah? Is that a current rate? Right, I'll bet you a pound to a pinch of Chinese excrement, but by 23, it'll cost you 3 times as much because you take too long to do it. HS2 is a classic example. How much is that going to cost now? Bearing in mind what it was going to cost when they first proposed it 2 years ago. Is your £50 million at current rate? Or are you predicting it's going to cost £100 million in 23, or is it going to cost more? That's what I'd like to know.
The budget we've been given by the government clearly states for this particular project it's 50 million to 100 million pounds, and that's what we are told to work within.
It's not enough!
Okay, then we're going to move on now. We've got a lot of time on the end for questions, and I will come back, I promise you. And I'm sorry you dickhead on this, but you will be first on the next question, okay? Stephen is going to talk about the pinch point, so this is very, very relevant. And I do ask you to watch it. I've already seen it. It's very, very good. It's very, very relevant to what highways England are looking at. So please bear in mind this Stephen here. It's a very good presentation, and I'm very grateful for him to give up his time and come and present to us. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Stephen Cranford. I've lived in Worthing all my life, which is 45 years, even though I don't look it. For much of that, I've actually lived on either the A24 or the A27. Now, I've been studying traffic flow, not as some kind of sad hobby, but professionally for the past 15 years or so. But I do take a great personal interest in this. And crucially, I want to say to you today, I'm just representing myself, I'm not representing my employers, I'm not representing any organisation or anyone else here today. These are my observations. And originally I approached Tim Loughton because I wanted to explain how doubling up a road into a dual carriageway might seem that would be the answer to everything. However, counterintuitively, that is not the answer. And I'm going to run through how I can prove this to you. Now, first of all, the way we monitor traffic flow, I dare say back in the day, it was people sitting at the side of the road counting cars as they go past. However, technology has advanced, and it's probably a good assumption that nearly every driver will have a mobile phone with them in their vehicle. Now, crucially, your mobile phone knows where it is through satellite positioning. And consequently, the network knows where your phone is, and crucially, how fast your phone is moving. And when you get a critical number of phones all moving along the path of a road at a certain speed, then that is the speed of the traffic. Now, that data can be converted into a visual display, and I've been studying these displays for my job for as long as this satellite data has been available. So, first of all, dual carriageways, you might think that is the magic answer to making traffic flow better. Not necessarily. I'm going to give some examples to you. These are all within the locality. Chichester bypass, especially if you approach it east from Havant. Dual carriageway in, dual carriageway all the way round. You've got a number of junctions, you've got traffic lights and roundabouts. You get terrible congestion there. Also, the Washington roundabout, it's been mentioned already today, the A24. In the morning, terrible congestion going up from Findon. I dare say a lot of that traffic is going via Stenning to avoid Worthing. However, you can get journeys that are sometimes up to 60 minutes at that particular point. Now, what I've got on the screen here, this is a typical data screen. This is public domain information. I haven't got any special access to this. If any of you wanted to look at these websites, you can, and I would urge you to do so. Now, what you're seeing here are some examples of the dual carriageway sections. I hope you can make it out. I appreciate some of the writing is quite small. Now, crucially, what I can tell you here, we've got enormous queues going through Worthing.
What time's it?
This is 8:29 in the morning, and it's on the 5th of September, this particular slide. Now, the reason I mention that date is the Grove Lodge traffic lights were off on that date. That is also the date that Poulter's Lane closed. We have an enormous queue from almost Long Furlong all the way through to the Sussex Pad traffic lights. Now, the Sussex Pad traffic lights was a notorious trouble spot. They have actually improved it in their view. But that is 2 lanes in, 2 lanes out. The Washington roundabout also, actually, at this instance, isn't looking too bad. I'm going to show you another image. This is taken on the 14th of July, 8 o'clock in the morning. Our single lane stretch through Worthing, when the Grove Lodge lights were out of action, I hasten to add, is running pretty well. The major congestion here is approaching the Hillbarn traffic lights in Lancing, coming from Lyons Farm, and similarly approaching the Manor roundabout in Lancing, which is 2 lanes in, 2 lanes out. Already a dual carriageway, already congested. Move on to my next picture. We can also get other problems that can manifest themselves. Now, this is another example, 21st of July. This is an evening rush. You can get several miles of queues. Again, over here, in fact, we've got one in Lewes, the Lewes bypass coming in from Falmer and approaching the Ashton roundabout. That is 2 lanes. So you're getting the idea of what I'm saying. Just by making it 2 lanes isn't the magic solution. Now, they can work really well. Usually, from Shoreham Airport, all the way through Brighton, all the way through to past Falmouth to Lewes, flows pretty well unless there's a problem. It's only really if there's an accident or breakdown that you can get some difficulties. However, even that can go wrong, and there is reason that I'm mentioning this to you. If I move on again, you can see, let me go on to the next one. This slide here, which was taken at around 8 o'clock in the morning on the 5th of September, so again, Grove Lodge traffic lights were off. You can still see big queues going up to the Washington roundabout up the A24. You've also got very long queues going from Ice-Savington all the way to Lyons Farm, all the way through Hillbarn up to the Shoreham Airport traffic lights. You've also, and this is the bit I wanted to point out to you, the Brighton bypass, which is our best dual carriageway in Sussex, in my view, even that is congested going up towards Patcham. The queue, if you can define it and recognise your landmarks, goes back to the Hangleton Link Road. And this is what has happened. Now, this junction here is the A27 interchange with the A23 north of Brighton. Now, like I said to you, this is one of our best dual carriageways. It's well away from most residential areas. There's nothing much to the north other than tiny little roads. But what happens is, the volume of traffic trying to get off at that junction is so overwhelming that it backs up onto the main carriageway. And that traffic in this instance, and on the left, by the way, if you want the comparison, that is Google traffic, which is Google Earth, which I'm sure most of you have on your phones. On the right is the same data taken at the same time, so you can see how they corroborate. This is from TomTom. which of course are the sat-nav people. Now, if we were, hypothetically, to get a dual carriageway through Worthing, the problem would be that you would only have a few points of entry and exit. Say, for example, Swansea Hospital, Hoffington, Grove Lodge, Lions Farm. The problem and the danger in having a dual carriageway in such a saturated residential area is that the crowding you would get at those junctions would become so overwhelming that the junctions themselves would jam, and the only place that the slack can go is onto the main road. If you live in High Southington and you've ever had to turn onto or off Durrington Hill or Southington Hill, you know going up Southington Hill you have a large number of parked cars. Fairly often you try to turn in, but you can't because it's blocked. The traffic trying to get onto the road from the residential areas like Sharmandean, like High Southington, that have no other option because they are trapped, will become so overwhelming that those junctions would jam up. Now, I'm going to talk about single-lane roads, because you might think, well, they're even worse. However, consider the A24 between Horsham and Dorking. It's winding, it's 40/50 miles an hour, but can you, in all honesty, say that you've ever encountered any major delays along that route? No. Polegate to Beddingham, now ironically that's in the news this week, people slate it as being dreadful. It's single lane most of the way. However, the advantage of these websites is that you can look, you might think you're in a terrible queue, but I look at the whole county. And believe me, it's not as bad as some of the dual carriageway sections. I would rather go from Polegate to Beddingham than Findon to Washington, for example. Another one that's a good example is the A21 between Lamberhurst and Hastings. Now, I know sections of that are being upgraded, but much of that is single lane. And that is a major commuter route from East Sussex. That flows pretty well. Also, the A22 between Hailsham and Godstone is mostly single lane. It's a north-south route. Apart from around East Grinstead, that flows pretty well. Now, the other thing that people might say is, what about going from 2 lanes into 1? Will that cause a bottleneck? Well, not necessarily. Now, if you consider the A27 coming in from Arundel into Worthing, you come past Coke Street, the speed limit drops, there's the speed camera, and you merge into 1 lane. Now, crucially, where the 2 lanes into 1 is accompanied by a reduction in speed, then it can work very sweetly indeed. And the reason is the packing density of the road will increase as the speed drops. Take, for example, a 70-mile-an-hour road. Now, the stopping distance, according to the Highway Code, is 96 metres, but I'll put it in car lengths for you, which is 24. At 40 miles an hour, the stopping distance is 9 car lengths. So you see you have gone from 2 lanes into 1, you've dropped from 70 down to 50 down to 40, and the packing density has gone up by between 2 and 3 times. So that amount of traffic can fit comfortably in between each other because they can be closer together. Now, junctions causing disruption, particularly Grove Lodge and Lions Farm. And it would seem illogical if you were explaining this to anybody else other than anyone who lived in Worthing, that if you went from 1 lane into 2, that you can get such incredible congestion. However, if you go eastbound towards Lions Farm on a bad day, that goes from 1 lane into 2 with terrible congestion. And normally, of course, you wouldn't get the chance to see how a junction could perform in any other way, because we're stuck with them. However, we've already alluded it to this evening. The Grove Lodge traffic lights scenario is such an example. Now, I'm going to show you a few more images. This picture here is... what's the date on that? That is the 5th of September. I'm going to keep mentioning this. Grove Lodge lights are off. This is the day also that Poulter's Lane closed, because a lot of people have been blaming traffic on Poulter's Lane. What you can see here is that there are enormous queues going towards Lions Farm, where it goes from 1 lane into 2, counterintuitive. Enormous queues going up towards the Washington roundabout. That's a dual carriageway. We like dual carriageways, apparently, because traffic flows better. We've also got enormous queues from Lyons Farm all the way through to the Sussex Pad traffic lights. Now that's 2 lanes, that's a dual carriageway, that should be wonderful, but it isn't. This is the day the Grove Lodge lights were switched back on. This bill here was taken at 28 minutes past 10 on Tuesday the 13th of September. And lo and behold, it's 10:30, everyone's at school, everyone's at work, the rush hour finished 90 minutes ago. But we have got enormous congestion going all the way from beyond High Southington right the way through to the Grove Lodge. Findon Valley is queuing from probably the Lime Tree Surgery all the way down to Findon Valley. And westbound we've got queues almost back to the Hill Barn lights. This is 15th of September, 2 days after the Grove Lodge lights were switched back on, and this is 8:39 in the morning. Now, can you see the difference? It's a bit of a rhetorical question. And incidentally, in case people were saying it's because Poulter's Lane was closed, I took these today. Friday, half term, there's no school traffic. This is 8 o'clock in the morning. Look at the only queue in the whole county. Where is it? Grove Lodge. Stationary traffic for 13 minutes going towards which junction? This is 11:12 in the morning, 11:02 I beg your pardon, 22 minutes it's now built up to. The only queue on the A27. In fact, I have been reporting my findings, I've been reporting these to the organisation that looks after the lights. And on one occasion I did actually make the provision of checking the coastal road from Honiton all the way to Folkestone. Now the reason I mention that is there is this theoretical highway that's been bandied about for as long as I can remember called the Honiton to Folkestone Relief Road. The time I checked it and took a screen grab and sent the data in, the only queue on that whole route, Dorset, Devon, Hampshire, West Sussex, East Sussex and Kent, was the Grove Lodge. Half term and Poulter's Lane is open. It's there, 24 minutes. Right, now this is a video that you might find quite interesting. I put this on YouTube. I put this video on YouTube and if you want to have a look at it, I'm sure we can see. Now this is how the queues develop over the day. 7 o'clock in the morning. This was taken on the 28th, so only a few days ago. Look at the way these queues build up to an unbelievable amount. And if you can picture where you are geographically, it all goes towards the Grove Lodge roundabout. Now, I'm showing you, this is now 11 o'clock in the morning, nothing anywhere else. 12 o'clock midday, stationary traffic. And remember, that's you and that's me stuck in that junction. 3:15 in the afternoon, still queues. 16:25, still queues. Now, I didn't manage to get any taken later that day, but what I do have in my cars as part of my traffic studies are in-car CCTV. And this is the comparison. Now, I had to wait 2 weeks to get a quiet approach to Grove Lodge. I'm showing you now, these videos will start at the same time, the moment you start going over the giveaway line at the roundabout. On the left is a day, those glorious days when we have no traffic lights. On the right, this was last week, 21st of October. That is actually 9:38 in the morning, so after the school rush. Can you see the difference? Now, I've been reporting the phasing of these traffic lights for some time. While you're watching that video, I shall read to you the response I got back. The first bit, and I totally get this, is about student safety. Yes, there are other ways that can be overcome. This is the bit that I thought might amuse you. Secondly, in terms of traffic flows, there is a high chance that the junction, Grove Lodge, would gridlock under heavier traffic flow periods. It gets better. The signals reduce this from happening and help to recover normal traffic conditions when this occurs. Now, I counted that day, it was congested for 11 hours. 11 hours. We are currently seeing an increase in traffic around the junction due to the closure of Poulter's Lane. Well, Poulter's Lane is back open, and Grove Lodge is still congested. And we had from the 5th of September, when Poulter's Lane closed, to the 13th of September, when there wasn't any congestion. Now, I'm not belittling the fact at all about the need to have student safety. Of course we do, but there must be other ways. The point of my video is that I can prove to you, with images and videos, that the junctions cause the delays. It's not the fact that it's one lane or two. Here's another video. Now, this is westbound on the A27, a route that many of us take, sometimes even several times a day, coming from Lancing on the lovely dual carriageway section towards Lyons Farm. Now, just for placement, this video was shot in August when the Grove Lodge traffic lights were not functioning. This video is taken at 10:19 in the morning, and what you're seeing is here, I again will put this up on YouTube, saying that this is footage. It shows how the traffic builds up, because again, I've been studying traffic flow for 15 years. I know pretty much how it performs. I won't let you sit through it in real time, and I've very kindly sped it up for you, just so I've measured it for you using a GPS. It's 0.7 miles to Lyons Farm. And as you can see here, the clock is advancing. We've all got better things to do, by the way, while we're stuck in this traffic, haven't we? 20 times I've sped this video up. We've been waiting 5 minutes so far. But the important point, again, I'm trying to make here is that one lane versus two, the one lane section flows so much better than the dual carriageway. If you continue watching, 10 minutes we've been. And I'm sure many of you have experienced this. Now, there's one thing about traffic lights that I will say is it's very unfair when you've been sitting in a traffic light jam for 25 minutes when there's only 7 cars coming the other way. It's especially bad when you've got roadworks and you've been queuing for 25 minutes to some temporary traffic lights where there's usually no one working. And on the other side, there's a queue that is perhaps 1 minute long. You feel really, really cheated. I'm sure that technology can do better. Right, now what you'll notice here is now we're on the single lane section, thank you very much. We're actually doing a pretty respectable speed. The GPS is telling me we're doing 27, 28 miles an hour, a pretty respectable and safe speed. What you'll notice as we approach the Grove Lodge roundabout is that you will pretty much just go straight through. Yet, you've just sat at that junction for over 20 minutes trying to get to it. So, my point is, there is no point in increasing the road through Worthing to a dual carriageway because the junctions hold it up. You can have 15 lanes going towards a junction if it can only release a few cars at a time. The only difference is you will be sitting alongside the person in the queue rather than behind them. Now you can see here. This is Warren Road. Warren Road, look, it's moving. It's normally awful because the Grove Lodge lights make that difference. Now, I can't believe it's beyond the wit of man to build subways or a footbridge. Northbrook College, at the bottom of Titmore Lane, they have a footbridge. Chichester, they have got 2 footbridges. Lancing, they've got that fabulous new academy. They've got a footbridge. 2 minutes and 55 seconds, average speed 26.7 miles an hour to go on the single lane stretch, which is actually a factor of 10 times faster than that stretch of the dual carriageway. So the point of this, I mean, I've perhaps been slightly flippant, but I have it shown you in several examples, is that it is not as straightforward as doubling up or tripling up the number of lanes. Traffic flow depends on the junctions and the pinch points, and if you can sort those out, if you can remove the causes of having to stop or at least mitigate them, you will conquer most of the problems. And I go on again to reiterate that you cannot retrofit a dual carriageway through Worthing. It's far too densely populated. If you were designing the town from scratch, that could work exceptionally well, but we can't. We've got to squeeze it in where it already is. And it would, without doubt, jam up. Now, I just will say one final thing. The Bexhill to Hastings Relief Road, I know that's not local to us, and we're not talking about that today. When that opened, I was actually invited along. I didn't manage to get to see the road under construction, but what I did, I looked at where the road joined the existing road. So they built this new shiny road. Wonderful, it never queues up ever. But when you get off that, this is what happens. These are two images of the same thing, and you probably won't be as familiar with the location as I might be. This was the morning that they opened the new relief road. The new relief road, fantastic, no queues. It joins the local routes in a residential area and jams up, and pretty much every morning it's jammed up since then. So that again was an example of me looking at the junctions, driving the route and saying this junction and that junction and that junction will cause you the queues. It's nothing to do with the number of lanes. So that is pretty much all I wanted to say. Hopefully I've shown you visually in terms of images and videos, and bear in mind these images are all on websites that you can access yourself. Look, don't just look at the queue you were stuck in, look at the queues elsewhere and realise that being 2 lanes isn't the magic answer. The answer is sorting out the junction. Okay, thank you very much.
After Stephen presented to the working group, he said, would I mind keeping him informed? And I'm telling him now he is part of the working group. Can I also say, and I know Stephen would have told you that, but we are pushed for time, that any of you groups who would like Stephen's presentation, if he is able, he would be delighted to come and give it to you. His fees are for a stand-up. Thank you very, very much indeed, Stephen. And I think that was very much appreciated by everybody. Ladies and we're going to hand over now to the business case. And then the rest of the evening, once the business case is over, is questions. Just my co-chair, who will sum up the evening in the last 5 minutes, and then we will be bidding you all a safe journey. So I'll give you over now to the business.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is John Haffenden. I'm the Major Projects Director of the Avon and Worthing Business Partnership. I was born in Brighton, and I've lived in Shoreham for over 40 years, so I'm a local person. Just to give you a bit of background, the Avon and Worthing Business Partnership is made up of managing directors and CEOs from large and small businesses in the area, as well as representatives from education, schools and colleges, as well as public sector employers. We work with strategic elected members and officers at district director level from Avon and Worthing Council, as well as with West Sussex County Council elected members. We have a very close working collective liaison with our local MPs. The Avon and Worthing Business Partnership supports the work that is being undertaken by Highways England to find a solution to what is actually the A27 gridlock. And we just had a very good example of the gridlock at a particular location, which I know we all know. Many of those involved in the traffic problems include owners and employees of considerable number of local businesses, and these traffic problems impact on those businesses and the people who are actually driving our local economy. Now I'd like to introduce Peter Webb, who is the Vice President of the Worthing and Ada Chamber of Commerce and a member of the Avon and Worthing Business Partnership. He's now going to pass on some facts and figures and show you some information to draw from our collective membership. Peter.
Thank you, John. Follow that, Steve. It's very good. Business community, which I represent here today, would back a bypass. There's no question about that. But we have to be realistic, and realistic is something we have to be. I've listened to one or two of you in this room today, and I have to say that you're not being realistic. 50 to 100 billion, you've heard Highways England set. That's not what they've said, that's what the government has said. And we have to be realistic and see what the government, or sorry, Highways England come up with. And as the MPs have suggested, that's probably going to be, they're just the pinch points and the junctions. And as Stephen has very, very much highlighted, the junctions are the key to the problem. And as businesses, we understand that, but businesses, we need a better A27. The Chamber of Commerce locally recently carried out a survey of its members, and 85% of the members that answered the survey said that the actual A27 affects their business in an adverse way. In fact, I'm going to skip through these because I think a lot of you know them already. But I think probably the last one up there is the interesting thing. You know, 373,000 more cars on our roads in the southeast in the last 5 years. That's a phenomenal number of cars. And if you project that out, that's only going to be another probably 500,000 cars by the time we get our new road. We've already seen, and I think Stephen quite adequately showed you where the road goes, and it goes to White Parish dependency, and we know where the pinch points are. I think it's Grove Lodge. The impact on our businesses. I think it's very important to understand that the A27 does have an impact on our businesses. Typically, if you're working outside or coming into Worthing, it can take over 60 minutes to get into Worthing or out of Worthing to go to somewhere like Chichester. That's not acceptable. As a business, employees will not come and work in Worthing. We have several employees that are working for me who've actually now left our employment because they've got fed up with sitting in queues. If you typically come in from even somewhere quite local like Arundel, it can take an extra half an hour each end of the day. That's 5 hours a day, 5 hours a week. You can do the maths yourself. But it is an horrendous amount of time just sitting in cars. Logistically, there's a lot. The logistic businesses locally have to carry the extra cost as well. And you have to realise that lorries and vans sitting in traffic cost extra money. What you probably don't realise is that delivering locally actually costs a lot more. And basically, that's also unacceptable to the businesses. We have to, as a business, carry out a bigger overhead because we've got the A27. It's difficult. I mean, there's a lot of councillors here today, and I know a number of you will look around the town like I do and get fed up with things like the Teagle Gate situation, the union place, and all of those. But if you're a councillor and you're a council officer trying to attract new business into the town, it's very difficult to do that. If when you drive into town you get stuck in a traffic jam, why would you want to come and work in Worthing? Why would you want to bring a new business here? It's very, very difficult to justify. And I think you have to understand as business people, we want to see a prosperous Worthing. That's what we want to see. We want to see an improved A27. We also want to retain our staff. It's not just about recruitment, it's also about retaining staff and also making sure they have a good place to come. And it's all, why would staff want to come and work in Worthing when they have to sit for flat an hour or so? I'm grateful to a local delivery company for these figures, but you can see yourself there. There's some tachograph figures of some vehicles, the same vehicle in fact, moving around the local area. And I think an average, it took 53 minutes to complete a 13-mile journey, 16 miles an hour. That is crazy. And you've all done this in your own cars, I'm sure. You've sat in traffic, and it just takes ridiculously long to go across town. I'm not alone in the business world that thinks that things should change. I've been talking to a lot of large businesses locally and small and medium businesses. I sit on the Chamber of Commerce. We've got a significant number of members that want to see a change in the A27. We need that change to take place. I'm not going to stand and read these out, because I'd like to play you a video as well. But there's big, small businesses. You probably don't know who Cobra Coffee are, but they run the Starbucks in Broadwater in town. And I think, there's some very good points made here. If anybody wants a copy of this, this will be on the Chamber of Commerce website to read. Shaw and Port, a very big success story over to our east. And again, they struggle with getting big vehicles in and out of there. This is where perhaps I'm going to be a little bit... but you need a short-term and a long-term solution. What's on offer is without question a short to medium term. I know many of you are saying it's going to be 2021, was it 2023? but we still need to look at some longer solutions. As far as I'm concerned, we need to take what's on offer. We need to be realistic, and we need to take what's on offer. I do believe that we need, as businesses as well, to be looking further afield, and we need to be looking further in advance. I think also us as businesses need to stand up and look at other options as well. We need to remove cars. Too many, I mean, my family's got 3 cars. I bet most of you in this room have got 2. My parents have only ever had 1. We as a nation are buying cars like no tomorrow. And, we all drive. I mean, I've got several people come to work, so they're husband and wife, they bring 2 separate cars. That's absolutely crazy. And the excuses I hear are, I've got to go to the gym afterwards. But we need to encourage things like car sharing, bike to work schemes. We need to use the public transport. I know the railways. Yeah, okay. But I'm not going to go there. And walking to work, we try and encourage our people to walk to work. But we do need a longer solution as well. And it's up to us businesses to do something. I accept that, and we as a business, and I'm sure many of the businesses locally, will take that on board. Okay. I'd like just, before I play you a quick video, I'd like to hand you over to Tina Tilly, who's our Chief Executive of our Chamber of Commerce.
Well, just following on from that, really to say exactly the same thing. We were all aware of this. It's been a constant question at Chamber of Commerce meetings. It's either been parking, which you seem to have got over that at the moment, so which is nice, but now it's the A27. Actively representing the business community is what Chamber of Commerce is here for. We need the support of the business voice. In the past, I understand that the business voice was very quiet. We need to all be stating the facts as they are, what we really want, what needs to happen. One of the heaviest used trunk roads, and there's nothing being spent on it. It just seems ridiculous. Limited to the improvements on the major junctions as we seem to be because of the financial implications, I think it's safe to say that we would all like to see more money being spent on it and the bypass happening. But whatever happens, we need something to happen, and we need it to happen soon because businesses, small, individuals and large, are all suffering from the A27. I'm going to hand back to John, who's going to finish off with the business case. We're going to do the video first. All right.
This is a video that was put together by West Sussex County Council a little while ago. But I think it does tell you a story, and I think it's very useful for you to listen to.
With a thriving community comprising businesses and residents, and with good access to ports, Gatwick Airport and London, the West Sussex coastal towns form part of a large urban area, with a population similar in size to some of the UK's largest cities. As a result, the transport infrastructure has to cope with a vast number of people and vehicles moving throughout the county every single day. Stretching from White Parish in Wiltshire all the way to Pevensey in East Sussex, the A27 is part of the UK's strategic road network, and between Portsmouth and Lewes, it is the only east-west trunk road south of the M25. As a result, the A27 is heavily used and widely known as one of the most congested roads in Britain, largely due to a series of bottlenecks that include Chichester, Arundel, Worthing and Lancing. Because of all the delays along its route, the Highways Agency has said that the A27 is one of the most unreliable trunk roads in England. The A27 is deemed by some to be an unfinished project, and it is widely considered by enterprises in these areas to cost money and limit economic performance due to its unreliability and frequent congestion. Based in Worthing, Carpenter Box is one such business affected by the A27.
The A27 impacts the business that we run here on lots of levels, really. It impacts in terms of the difficulty that staff have in transiting between their homes and the business, and vice versa. It impacts very much in terms of the time that we need to allow when we go to visit clients. It's so unpredictable, there are so often delays that we have to build in a cushion. In some cases I would tend to sort of put in an extra half an hour, and of course time is money. So, whilst we're sitting on the A27 trying to get to where we need to go, we're not dealing with other stuff, and of course there's a potential that we may be late, and that's never good if you're going to visit either a client or a contact. I think where it really can have an effect is in terms of getting new clients and pitching to businesses, and there is this negative perception of Worthing because of the A27, and it will sometimes make people think twice. So I think there is a real negative for bringing business to Worthing because of the A27. I did a straw poll by email with the staff here. So many of them said, both in terms of their personal life and their business life when they might be visiting clients, that they'd been affected. But there were so many comments that came along with that, which sort of went along the lines of it's a nightmare, it seems to be getting worse, and so on and so forth. So there's a real sort of feeling that things are not getting better, and I suspect a bit of despondency that they're only going to get worse. If it weren't for the difficulties that we get with the A27, we would be looking for business into Kent. But that east-west corridor through the county, both through West Sussex and East Sussex, is so appalling that the time it takes for us to transit to where we might be looking for a potential client is advanced. So that, the whole question of the east-west transit through the county, I think is a massive question, and I think impacts all of the businesses, whether they're in East or West Sussex.
Graham Bryant, the Managing Director of Grow Train Limited and Chairman of the West Sussex Growers Association, explains how the A27 directly impacts on his business.
The A27 affects us in several ways. A lot of our tutors are not near to this site, so they're coming from Eastbourne, from Hadlow in Kent, from Hampshire, and some of them are taking an hour and a half to 2 hours a day on both directions to get to this location. In terms of the delegates again are coming from around the southeast. Okay, a lot of them are from within West Sussex, but you've got squeeze points along this last section at Arundel, at Lancing, which can really affect the timing. Yeah, the West Sussex growers are, our membership, about 60 growers located throughout the area. They're employing about 7,000 people. So obviously there's an awful lot of movement there along the 27, along some of the minor roads. So it affects the efficiency of the business in terms of those movements, people getting to work, but equally it affects their quality of life. So it's affecting the businesses in that way, but it's equally affecting the businesses in the way of transporting the goods away from sites and getting them off to supermarkets or the various pack houses or other locations. The A27 affects the growth of our business because it's a consideration for outside businesses in dealing with us. Probably it's quite difficult to quantify, but certainly there is a financial cost. And in terms of time, but equally in terms of energy. Obviously, if you're sitting in a queue using fuel, then obviously that's having quite a major effect. My personal feeling is the A27, we've got a half-finished project. It's a project that was dured a lot of the way, and you've got these various points which have not been addressed, which do now need to be sorted out.
The bottlenecks along the A27 also have a knock-on effect to the towns and villages nearby, and many are used as a rat run. Half Moon Bay Leisure Limited, producers of towing solutions for motorhomes, is based in Storrington. Owner Alan Manton explains how the A27 affects other areas of the business.
We're very close to the A27 and we use it. We try and avoid it as much as we can because of delays. It means that we can be late with our customers, and we spend an awful lot of time stuck in jams there, which means that we're not as efficient as we could be. The southeast of England is one of the most populated areas of the country, and it has a severe lack of infrastructure allowing traffic to flow freely along the south coast, and that is a detriment to businesses and people in the southeast of England. Two key bottlenecks along the A27 is Arundel, where it peters out. You have to work your way through the village around the bypass, and Chichester bypass. Chichester bypass is always heavily loaded. It's a great slowdown point for us, especially when there's flooding. The A27 past Worthing has been a bottleneck for years, and traffic is terribly slow through there. We spend a lot of time caught in jams, late for our customers. They find it difficult to get to us because of the heavy traffic that is stopped on that road due to the lack of infrastructure. If we had better infrastructure, yes, I'm certain that my business would grow more effectively.
The problems along the A27 also affect other areas of business. Worthing Football Club has many issues with the road, with both visiting fans and players struggling to get to the venue on match day.
The A27 affects the football club primarily because it deters the travelling supporters from visiting the club and the town. We have, week in, week out, we have teams from all over the area, Kent, London, Surrey, visit the club, and their fans particularly are being put off from visiting the town. We get comments when the teams arrive, saying how bad the traffic is. Those from further away prefer, if they're staying in a hotel, prefer to stay outside of Worthing because of the difficulty getting in. The traffic situation on the A27 also affects the players from both sets of teams, where they have to leave work early in order to get to the ground in order to meet the kick-off time, particularly midweek where the kick-off is 7:45. That means they often have to leave well before 5 o'clock just to beat the traffic. We have situations where players from both sides don't get to the ground.
There are numerous businesses.
If you just wait 2 seconds.
Which are affected by the A27, whether directly or indirectly. With more people wanting to live in society.
You think you know, you don't know.
I appreciate you all want to start asking questions, and we do understand that, but we all are all trying to work with you to actually ensure that we do get some improvements done to this particular road. I think you'll agree that on behalf of the business community, I'd like to thank Peter and Tina. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this illustrates the compelling business need for the need to improve the A27. To do nothing is not an option, as the problem is not going to go away, it will just clearly worsen. So we actually need the Highways England to take on board what they've actually been tasked to do by the government and come forward with some excellent points I'm sure they'll come forward with to try and improve not only the area of the road for our use as businesses, but for your use as well as you travel along that road. Thank you very much.
It is very important that we do look at the whole picture. We're building houses like God knows in Worthing. When you've got houses, you need jobs. When you need jobs, you need businesses to give them jobs. So that's all part of the big picture. We're now going back onto the question time. And there's a gentleman here, I said, I promised would be first. Have you got a mic, sir? Give me the mic. Is there a mic, please?
Stand up.
Right, just like it around and then from the side either, sir. Your question, sir. Please keep it short.
Hi. There were several mentions earlier on in the presentation about future traffic densities being based on current monitoring. Yesterday, there was an announcement that Southampton is going to expand container handling facilities massively. That's what our government got, I believe. Today, we can go up to the A27 and we'll see a number of HGVs going through, quite a few in fact, carrying containers going to Southampton. Some of those containers are actually empty. They're being transferred from Leeds to Southampton via the A27. It's a relaxing route, I think.
Crazy route.
The question is the possible use for the A27 caused by the removal of the bottlenecks at Chichester and Arundel, and hopefully here, being taken into account because new road works and improved roads, new roads, attract traffic.
I'll put them down there, Abby. The mics are working.
The traffic modelling for the Chichester project, basically the whole South-East traffic network is being prepared at the moment, and they will be linked up. So all these projects along the corridor do take into account traffic growth.
But the new container handling facilities will be complete by the time the traffic modelling has been done. So the traffic won't be here yet. It will come in the future when the new improved A27 is supposed to be handling everything.
The traffic modelling also includes future-proofing, so it takes into account the traffic that's been predicted in the future, so that's forecasting into the modelling as well. So even though it's not completed yet, it will be by the time the model is built. So we have forecasts that's built into the model.
That sounds
good. Come on, you've had a fair crack at the whip.
Okay.
What are the...
Started. Haven't the improvements already started with your new lights that you put up on the Arundel Road and the Upper Brighton Road? Can you tell us, please? The new lights that intrude into our gardens and can be seen from the International Space Station. They're dual carriageway lights. Street lights we're talking about. Come on, wakey.
Yeah, sorry, you haven't identified where you were. I still don't know who I'm talking to. But, yeah, I mean...
The lights at 100 lumens, 100,000 lumens along the A27 at High Salvington and the Upper Brighton Road, the new street lights.
Yeah, so...
You know the ones that you spent millions on?
Yeah, probably cancelled by what I tend to say.
Bottomley knows about them.
Yeah, okay. But we're not really here to talk about street.
Stumped.
Okay, question over there. Yes?
You can ask a question.
Hello. I can actually speak without the microphone, but there's a point which has not been covered, and I'm surprised that it hasn't. At the beginning of the presentation, the people from the highways said that the part of the government directive was that the major benefit should come to the local community. Now, I've not heard anything that actually says that, because those that live in Worthing will know that the biggest benefit to Worthing would be to take away all the through traffic, whether that's east or west.
Yes, well, of course, that's true, but we are where we are, which is
They're on a bypass, that's where you are.
Okay, yeah. You're complaining you're not getting an answer, and now you're stopping an answer. You can't have it both ways.
Fully appreciate it.
All the people in this room, stand up if you want a bypass.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm going to have
Point taken, and I hope you don't get notwithstanding that. Can we get back to questions, please? Because all you're doing is stopping people asking questions.
You're spinning it out.
Could I ask a question, please? You've talked about the cost-benefit ratio. What about the cost-benefit of the quality of life of the people in work? Has that actually been considered?
So part of the analysis that goes into the cost-benefit ratio, that includes what you
Sorry, I've lost the line.
Right, I'll keep it close to my lips. I've lived in Worthing all my life. I have been born here, brought up here, educated here. And I've been married 50 years next year. And we were told in 1967, Mr. Bottomley, I have to argue a little there, that it was not in the 90s this road was started. It was way back in the 60s. And we were told that that road would be the best road between Folkestone and Honington. It has never been built. The other thing I would like to know from you, who are the stakeholders in this little group? Who is actually giving Worthing the chance to have a decent, healthy life, which is the people, who then can be then employed by your Chambers of Commerce? So can you please answer me too, where the money went when the properties were sold 3 times before on the Arundel Road? You tell us there is no money. Where is that money held? Because you gained money from those properties.
Answer the question.
First of all, we are agreed the first schemes came in the 1960s. In fact, I'm slightly surprised that the Normans and the Romans didn't try as well. I said that the house has been bought and sold. I said that the house has been bought and sold several times, so we are in agreement on that. Secondly, the Department of Transport has a certain pot of money over a period of years, and those who have schemes which can bring cost benefits and get through inquiry and are acceptable and bring benefits to local people are the ones that go ahead. The answer to your question about who got the money from the buying and selling of the houses, that's through the Department of Transport, and it's one of those things which they have to go through if a scheme is frustrated.
One speaker, please. One speaker. I've got a gentleman here with a question.
The government is facing environmental directives, and I can look at the schemes which have been proposed tonight, and there is only one scheme which is going to improve the environmental performance for residents in Worthing, and that is the bypass. There's a second part, which is totally separate, and that is the Highways Agency, in looking at cost-benefit analysis, will no doubt have a long formula. Part of that formula is one which is divided by the cost. And if the cost is 0, the benefit analysis will give a CBR of infinity. So obviously, the lowest cost option is the one which they're going to recommend.
Okay, that was a nice statement. I'll firmly get the question. Please stick to questions, as I'm going to cut you off.
Hi. My question is specifically for Tim, because I think you've had a really easy time tonight. We've seen from the presentations that traffic and car use is obviously going to increase dramatically. A lot of those are going to be Nissans over the next few years, obviously. Do you ever see a stage where
we will get to the stage where we actually follow the expert advice from the 2002 South Coast Corridor Multimodal Study, page 21, which recommended a bypass around Worthing.
I would love to see, and have done all along, a solution which includes a bypass which takes the traffic away from Worthing itself. Absolutely, that's what we campaigned for all those years. Realistically, at the moment, that is not an option for cost, for National Park, which is one of the reasons I opposed the National Park. I'm afraid, like it or not, that is a consideration now. It makes it much harder to build that road, which is why tunnelling was looked at as well, and the cost of that, starting at 1.2 billion, whatever it would end up to be, does not make it remotely affordable at the moment.
Do you ever see it get to that stage?
Yes, look, there are two stages to this. We have to try and get something done now, and I think Stephen's explanation that you can bring improvements if you deal with it, starting with Grove Lodge, which we opposed right in the first place, and some of the other things, will help. Longer term, however long that's going to be, if a bypass becomes feasible again, because traffic changes, cars change, the nature of the National Park changes, that may be feasible. That is not realistically going to happen in this roads plan. So if we just go for a bypass, nice option though that may be, and it's also fraught with other problems, because most of that traffic, over 60% of that traffic on the A27 is local traffic, and like it or not, that's what the GPS shows. And like it or not, a lot of traffic is not going to take a 7-mile detour. So however much we might want them to, they're not. So let's get something that we know we can do and afford now, but a bypass is not, however much we may want it, is not in the frame in the next few years. And that, I'm afraid, is the realistic situation at the moment.
Question at the back there, please.
Excuse me, I've got the mic. Okay? Big lorries and lots of traffic already use the long furlong A24 Stelling bypass route. That's my comment. My question is, so when are you going to improve this route, especially if you're going to be working on the current A27 alignment, because the traffic, all those big lorries, can't be contained on a road that's being worked on. Another one is, and if you improve the current A27, this will attract more traffic. And how would you like to live along this road with all the pollution, the noise, and the ugliness of it? And we have a college on that road with young people. Do we want all that pollution with the small particulates that they have to breathe in and possibly causing cancer?
The air pollution is one of the most important factors in all the research they did in this, and we have some really bad air pollution, particularly around Grove Lodge there. Air pollution is maximised by traffic when that traffic is not moving. The key to all of this is getting better flow of traffic, and that starts at those pinch points. Absolutely. So air pollution was one of the major considerations within all the research that Highways England does. And if you look at all our stretch of the A27, there were red lights or hazards for just about every consideration. Air pollution, congestion, delay time, and everything, which absolutely showed that something needs to be done in that stretch. All I'm saying is, realistically, a bypass in the next few years is not going to happen, or trying to turn the long furlong into a bypass.
is not going to happen, how much we may like that. Therefore, we've got to look at things that will happen and we can afford to make happen. But one thing we've also made clear is because it was actually no mean feat to get the A27 included in the government's road plan. It hadn't been for the last 20 years. It was not on the radar at all. What we said to the Highways England, when they come up with their various options, if there is an option that costs more than 100 million, not hundreds of millions more, but they think would actually achieve a better solution, then it's up to us, MPs and councillors, to go back to the Transport Secretary and say, look, for this amount more, we think we can get a better scheme that would actually do the job. Then that option is open as well, and we've already broached that with the Transport Secretary. And that's why we want to see what the options on the table are, and if there are better options that just aren't affordable, that we could make affordable.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be the last question because we're just a little bit over time. Gentleman here has had his hand up just about the whole of the night. Please make it a short question.
As our Conservative MPs are part of business, what I'd ask them, is why are we spending money having a wind farm which is actually saving pollution, but we're not putting money towards the pollution that's around Worthing? Why can't we look at separate budgets and say to save the pollution, for more to save energy, why can't we have a bypass and transfer money from one pot to another pot, as you would do in business? Would this not work?
Tim Wisely says that the wind farm is financed privately that will come out of your bill in time. The difficulty with having a road that goes up, as we saw on the map, and comes down again, is that that will actually delay traffic, not speed it up. And it won't take away the 60% of the traffic, which is Worthing and district traffic on the A27. So I think when the Highways England come out with their proposals next year, we'll actually be able to go through who gets what benefit if it went ahead, and then we can have a further discussion. But the key point is not to put all the hopes on something which didn't happen before, was rejected by the inspector, and won't happen in the foreseeable future, as Tim has said. We've got the responsibility of trying to represent your interest and the interest of everybody here, and that needs to be made clear to people. What I hope we've done this evening.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that's the end of it. Do not forget, the question sheets are down here. You can put your written questions in, and I personally will make sure they're responded to. I'm just going to hand over now to Andy Swain, my co-chair, to say all we today.
Good evening. Thank you very much for everybody turning up. There's obviously quite a lot of strongly held views in the room, which was no surprise to us while we set this session up. For those of you who've got questions, please use the slips so we can try and get you answers. There are quite a lot of people have been asking about business cases in Highways England. For those of you that want to understand what is likely to come in the amount of detail, the Chichester consultation has just finished. Have a look at that on the website, see how it works, and start thinking ahead about the questions you would like to ask. Because you can see that because we're not the first bit. So thank you very much for attending and have a safe journey home.
Hey, don't forget your phone. Yeah. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is that. A further update to follow, no doubt. Thank you for watching. Have a nice evening.